James.
I was watching a series of videos that Mr. James O'Keefe here did. What is he doing? Is he sending in his little hidden cameras to CEOs, generals talking about drone strikes? No. He did this series called New Jersey Teachers Unions Gone Wild. He's surveilling ordinary working class people. He's asking union officials, oh, would you defend me if I did this? Would you defend me if I did that? Which is like asking a lawyer, would you defend me if I was accused of murder? Yes, that's what a lawyer is. And it's a good thing. You can't be in prison arbitrarily. It's a good thing. You can't be fired arbitrarily. In one of these videos, he's talking about a teacher who was accused of saying the N-word. They didn't completely lose their job. He was taking this as, oh, see, unions think it's okay to say the N-word, which is obviously asinine. Thinking that somebody's career shouldn't be ended over doing a bad thing is not the same as saying the bad thing is bad. But then again, James is a liar, so that is in character.
All right. My name is Ben Burgess. This is Give Them an Argument. I am joined by our super producer, Jake Appett. Our graphic designer, Andy, is not going to be able to join us tonight, but he'll be back. Well, not next week, because next week is 4th of July, but next time we do a regular episode. And meanwhile, it's going to be a very full house tonight with various guests. The great Dr. Jennifer Burgess is back for a philosophy segment at the end. She was gone last week. We're going to have our very good friend Jason Miles on a little later to talk about some stuff that happened over the weekend. That's not the main stuff we're talking about. A little bit, what we're going to be talking about here in this first part, but also some other stuff. The main guest is going to be Dr. Adnan Husain, who is a history professor. This is something we've had planned for a while. We're going to do a little philosopher-historian dialogue on the Marxist analytic philosopher G.A. Cohen's book, Karl Marx's Theory of History, which should be a lot of fun. And our friend Naomi Caravani is hanging out in the postgame for patrons. So good stuff firing on all fronts. Of course, what that cold open was, that you just watched, was a little video. Our man, I don't even know what to call it. Our TikToker, GP put together of a little bit of two things that both happened this weekend, which were, so on Saturday I did this debate with Tulsa Gabbard and Tim Pool and James O'Keefe, except really it turned into like 90% me and James going at it because it was something that happened before the something that happened before the debate, like minutes before the debate. So that was a little teaser of it. We're going to get back into that in just a moment, but we do have a couple other things to get to first. So, Jake, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. It was an eventful weekend, both personally and in the world, or I guess at least for you personally. But I'm doing pretty good, all things considered.
Yeah, well, it was an eventful weekend, definitely for me personally. I should say I saw Jake for a little while this weekend since I was in New York. And mostly for good stuff, also for some very bad stuff. Not that any of the stuff with Jake and it was bad, just to be clear on that. But thank you so much, Phil, for the super chat. Appreciate that. Appreciate you. So, well, before we get to the stuff that was eventful for me for this weekend, let's talk a little bit about what was eventful for the world in general for this weekend. Certainly for the bodily autonomy of half of the population of this country, with ripples around the world. So, Jake, what happened on Friday? Anything noteworthy?
Yeah, Roe v. Wade was overturned, as I found out at a push notification while talking to my therapist. I was just talking about my own issues, and I was like, "Whoa, Roe v. Wade was overturned!" And I think she didn't follow the news as closely because she didn't know about the. So she was like, "No way!" And then I was like, "All right, back to whatever bullshit you're dealing with." So that was very trippy, but yeah, it's Yeah, that was a very strange experience, but I feel like it just, this weekend, like there was a lot of activity. It's fun seeing you, having a few drinks, seeing a panel, and feel like it's settling in a little bit. What kind of country we live in right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I should say on Friday, I had, we played just as a clip a conversation that I had recorded slightly earlier about this, with Lillian Cicerchia, fan favorite, multiple time past guest from the What's Left of Philosophy podcast, where she talked a little bit about, not so much the philosophy half of this, but on an activist level, right? What sort of movement it would take to to kind of fight for abortion rights in the post-Roe world, what the how different that world is and isn't going to be in some ways from what we have right now. So I think we have like a few minutes kind of preview of the conversation with Lillian.
Yeah. Let me play it for you, and we'll play as much as we can, timing allowed.
Sure.
What's coming is a world that's basically geographically segregated in terms of access to reproductive health care services. And it's already like that. So there are many blue states that have made, like New York, that have made abortion access or the right to an abortion, not access, but the right to an abortion a part of its state mandate. So it's constitutionally provided for in New York. That's not going to be true in any number normally red states where that have sort of wheedled down abortion access to the point where it's illegal, or it is legal in a very circumscribed and time-limited, time-sensitive way. And there are all kinds of trigger laws that once this decision is made will be handed down, and then abortion will become illegal or simply inaccessible in those states. So the way in which it will be criminalized will vary by state, but the point is that there are a lot of places in which people will not be able to get abortions, and you're going to have a geographically segregated world of reproductive health care services in which people have to travel really long distances. Many already do. So like if you live in South Dakota right now, there's one abortion clinic in that state, one Planned Parenthood, and you're already driving for hours and hours to get these services. That's just going to become worse. So I think I would stress the continuity with the present and acknowledge that it will be worse. And the reason it's worth stressing the continuity with the present is that there's a lot of like hysteria about what this will be like. And I think it's going to be an exacerbated version of what already exists because it's been so bad for so long. And we talk about this like it's just a part of our regular culture wars, but things have been deteriorating for so long that for a lot of people, the post-Roe world is the status.
Yeah, so the whole conversation is about 15 minutes. We have a link to it in the description for this episode, so I can check that out, which I would encourage you to do. Lillian has a lot of smart things to say about this. I should also say, if you prefer it in text, a edited transcript of that conversation appeared on Saturday in Jacobin. So, do we have a graphic of that? I'm actually not sure if we do or we don't. We might. Yeah, maybe not. Oh, no, we got it. I found it. There we go. So, the voting harder won't bring back Roe is the title of the text version of the interview. So I would just strongly, I would strongly encourage people to check that out, not because of my like prompts, right? But which were nothing special, but because of what Lillian said and the kind of substance of the interview, I think is definitely worth tracking. And yeah, I mean, it's such a big topic, but I'm not sure what else to say about it right now. Do you have any other thoughts, Jake, before we switch gears?
No, I think pointing people to the interview and or however they want to consume it is a great start, because that was a little bit more about how it's a continuation from the present, but she goes on to talk more about how we could actually build a movement, right, and make universal demands. So it's not all doom and gloom. If you're interested in thinking about how could I fight back, then I definitely recommend the interview.
Yeah, right. It's a lot of it's about sort of both kind of activist strategies, how we could kind of have freedom riders for this essentially in states that ban abortion, and also about how to sort of tie it into a larger positive vision that you could build a big coalition for. That about tied it into rights to other kinds of healthcare, and a sort of vision of like a democratic socialist vision, of reproductive healthcare and healthcare in general, and sort of expansively economically, right, giving people real choices. And she talks about some positive models in European countries. So anyway, check it out. I'm gonna stop just saying what's in the interview. Just go read the interview or watch the interview. But of course, I know I think so too. Somebody in the chat, so, said something about Jed's attitude towards the Led Zeppelin shirt, and um, I actually do not remember whether she bought me the shirt or not, but she may have. And at any rate, I literally wore a Zeppelin shirt to our wedding, so I don't think there's a problem there. But in any case, let's talk about something that's less sort of consequentially grim than the Dobbs decision, but also less fun than talking about classic rock. Let's talk about what happened this weekend. So there are a couple elements to this, and I don't want to do. Yeah, I had a jacket over it. I'm not a barbarian, but I have. I don't want to spend too much time with the setup, but we'll spend a little bit of time at the setup, just so we can kind of make this make sense as much as possible. So for anybody who's watching right now who did not watch the episode that we did last week with Matt Leck, since I was getting ready for this debate, Tim Pool, Tulsi Gabbard, James O'Keefe, the title of the episode was "Let's Talk About Tim, Tulsi, and James." Or possibly Tulsi, Tim, and James. I remember we did the alliteration, and we did segments on all three of them. And so in the James O'Keefe segment, what we really focused on was his anti-union views. So for a couple reasons, obviously, one is just that building worker power at the workplace level is a major theme of this show, and it's very central to our interests. And so his position on that, which is not pro-union to put it mildly, is something that is that obviously we're going to go after him for. I also think there's an important tension here between the sort of usual right-wing culture war position of pretending to care a whole lot about free speech, and the fact that one of his big complaints about the teachers' unions is that it makes it harder to get people fired. And think, well, okay, well, wait a second. If you really care about that, I'm not going to go into this argument too much because I'm going to go into it in detail in one of the clips we're going to be watching. But I think those two things are in tension, right? That's the larger case I was making. So as part of this, we showed just a little bit, right? Not very much, but like a minute each of a couple of different videos in the series. And so for one of them, we showed a video. We showed the first 54 seconds of the video, and then we cut off at 54 seconds because that's kind of the end of the section. They changed the subject right after that, and you'll see in the video you're about to watch, you'll see James claiming repeatedly that the part they wanted me to show was 10 seconds later. It was not 10 seconds later. I don't push back against that in the moment because I don't fucking remember exactly how many seconds later it was. Like, it had been a while since I'd watched the video. Like, he said 10 seconds, so I just assumed it was really 10 seconds, but it was not. they spent a good 30 seconds talking about other stuff. Like they say 3 or 4 other things before this part, which is maybe a small nitpicky point, but I actually think it's kind of a significant misrepresentation in terms of where they're, in the context of this, right? So, okay, so you'll see him misrepresent where where the video cut off. But there's also a big thing that, there's been this sort of legion of James O'Keefe fans who have been in, every version of social media platform that exists.
I think some of them might be saying like beep boop a little bit, like because there was a lot of the same message copied and pasted. Yeah, a little dystopian. But anyway, sorry. Yeah, a lot of the same one-liners, or else they have really great message discipline that we should aspire to.
Yeah. I suspect that some of them are bots. I also suspect that some of them are like 5 people with 50 accounts, but who knows? Maybe that's wrong. I have no idea. These are just suspicions. So there are definitely some people, right? Because there have been people who have telephone gamed this in all sorts of crazy ways. It'll make more sense when we watch the clip. But there are people who have like concluded things that go way beyond anything even James said. There are people who've been all over the Instagram. So like Jen and I have an Instagram, since it's like the whole point of it was like, okay, I would like post to it sometimes, usually show stuff, and she would just like post like pictures of us doing things, so kind of a bit of a weird side of whatever. Then it was like more of it's like a personal Instagram for the most part. It's like a little bit of work stuff, right? But it's like mostly her thing, right? She's the one posting to it like a good 80% of the time. But since I don't have a separate Instagram account, right? That's just the Instagram we have, and the Project Veritas when they put out this hit video, they tagged it, so that's been like besieged by angry trolls who were like mostly spent the weekend yelling at Jen because I never checked the Instagram. So it's been pretty weird. But here's the backstory of all of this. So yeah, all the stories are from me because I literally don't even know how to do a story. I only know how to do a post. So in any case, so 100% of those are from Jen. The posts are like maybe 20% me. Okay, so here's what happened. We were about to do so there were 3, it was like a whole event over the course of the evening on Saturday evening. And there were some stand-up comics at different points. There were different people, but the main 3 things were these 3 panels. So the first one was Cornel West in dialogue with Coleman Hughes. Whatever. It's just fun watching Cornel West talk. I mean, I actually went into the audience for a little bit of that one just to check it out. There was one with Destiny and also Margaret Kimberly talking to some of the craziest right-wingers I've ever seen. I don't remember all their names. And then the last one was going to be me, Tulsa Gabbard, Tim Pool, James O'Keefe. So fast forward to like, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes, maybe less than that even, before our debate was supposed to start. And I am standing, it's in like a Broadway theater. It's like, this is a huge theater, right? But they have it's the Beacon Theater. So I'm standing like right off stage, which is where I'm supposed to, to like get ready to go on. And there's this dude who I've never seen before, but is apparently Project Veritas employee, which he does not tell me, of course, because that would have ruined it, right? And not only does he not tell me that he's affiliated with Project Veritas, everything about his appearance and demeanor screamed event staff, right? He was wearing a suit, he was holding an iPad, right? Like it all looked very sort of professional, event staff. And he was like, "Ben, may I speak to you for a moment, before your panel?" It's like, "Okay, sure, what's up?" Right? And so he leads me back into the hallway, this kind of room where there are like 20 Project Veritas guys standing around. There are multiple cameras going. There's a point you'll see in the video where I'm like, there are all these cameras. They're like, oh, there are only 2 cameras. There were 2 big cameras that there were like several people who were like holding up, you know. holding up their phone, like clearly filming it also. And so I actually like count them at one point in the video. And he sticks a microphone in my face, Project Veritas, ambush journalism style, and demands that I tell him, that I answer for my various crimes. So do we have this one ready to pull up?
Yep, I'm about to share it.
All right. Yeah, I should also say I do want to own two things that are definitely L's of mine here. One, he points out at one point, well, we'll stop when we get to that. I'll save that one. But the other one is, I also just like when that happens, like what I should have said, like the first 5 seconds is, dude, we're about to go on a panel. Just say whatever you have to say then, right? Which he totally could have done. There's nothing that he says here he couldn't have said on the panel we were about to do. But I guess you can't make it a Project Veritas video if it's just a clip of a panel. It has to be like, oh, we caught him, right? So it has to be some kind of like weird hallway ambush thing. So in any case, let's watch this. So this is the Project Veritas video that a vast army of possibly people have been spreading over social media in the last couple of days.
I just said it twice, but I'll say it a third time.
I'll release the full raw video tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm sure you. I will be fascinated. I will be fascinated to see if it's actually the full video.
Hey Ben, James.
Hey.
Nice to see you.
See you.
How you doing? Are you excited for the panel?
I am, yeah.
Hey, this one clip here of you talking about the Teachers Gone Wild video.
Yep.
Remember this?
Yep.
You talk about the video games laughing on their dime.
Yep.
Union officials. Remember this? Right? Laughing while playing video games. Then you kind of mock that because it was like, what's the point of that? And like, I kind of agree with it if that was the only thing that the video showed. But 10 seconds later in that very video, which you cut from, was the woman talking about using an. She says the N-word to a student, right? 10 seconds later. Right?
Yeah. So,
All right, let's pause.
I'm glad to know that you have that you've had this.
So, never having been ambush interviewed before, I was not quite quick on my feet enough here. I should point out, I didn't even notice this the first 2 times I watched this video. He just lied again, right? And in 2 ways. One is it's not 10 seconds later, right? There's 30 seconds of other subjects here, which I know is a very small point to harp on, but it's kind of a significant one because they're presented as like, oh my God, you doctored the video by leaving this out. It's like, dude, we just played the entire first minute or first 54 seconds unedited, right? Stopped at what seems, I think if you watch it, you'll see is a pretty natural stopping point. And the part you want us to talk about wasn't even the very next thing. There were like a few other things first. So that's one thing, right? Second lie. It's not that she calls a student the N-word 30 seconds later, right? There's no footage of whatever incident, may or may not have happened in like 2007 or whatever, in this video. What there is a union official talking about the incident, right? It's not a recording of the incident. It's a recording of people at the union conference talking about the incident, which again, maybe a small thing, but like also I think maybe matters a little bit, but let's unless you want to throw in something there, let's keep going.
Moral epiphany about selective editing.
Just so you know, I showed him the clip. I found the clip, and I was just kind of wondering. I saw that you were a professor from Morehouse, an adjunct professor, and I was just curious how you thought that a teacher saying the N-word. Were you saying it's okay for New Jersey black students to be called the N-word by a union official?
Yeah. So I think that you're not actually wondering that. I think that you're a very dishonest person if you're pretending to wonder about that. I think that the function of a union, one of the functions of a union, is to provide people with representation and the best defense possible they can get in the context of a disciplinary proceeding, the same way that a lawyer would provide you with representation in the best defense possible.
Why did you edit the tape to exclude the N-word mention?
I did it.
Yeah, the tape is like half an hour. The idea that I'm editing it because I'm showing in that clip that I'm showing, what am I doing? I'm showing that you are including all of this stuff that, you guys decide to put that in the video. You probably had hundreds of hours of footage.
She was just,
No, I'm sorry.
what are you sorry about?
That is my polite Midwestern way of saying don't interrupt me. So they have so you are the one who chose to include that in the video, right? You probably had hundreds of hours of footage.
The teacher calling a student the N-word.
Yeah,
And you said that I was wait. I'm sorry.
I know this is what you do, this ambush gotcha stuff, but what I'd like you to do,
I showed the clip to my boss.
instead
The clip.
of asking silly ass leading questions, what I would like you to do is explain to me, right, in context, why is it that you think that particular should have been shown? And in particular, what do you think should happen if that happens? Do you not think that people should get representation from unions when they face disciplinary consequences?
That clip showed that they did get that clip showed. I'm sorry. Let me, if I can say something, sir. No, sir.
No. We'll talk about this on the panel.
Why did you edit the tape? Why did you doctor the tape? Why did you doctor it? Do you think that a union official should call a student the N-word? Why are you laughing about the N-word?
Well, I'm not laughing at the N-word.
Yes, you are laughing.
I'm not laughing.
You're also shaking.
I'm not laughing at the N-word. You're a liar.
You think this is a lie because Lissa Ploshnik was suspended in New Jersey. It made the front page of the Star Ledger, and you doctored that out. You edited the. You didn't include it. It was 10 seconds after the tape, and you doctored.
Seconds after that, and 10 seconds after that. The idea that that's doctoring is.
Do you
I think the most generous way you can put that is very confused. Now,
do you care that the teacher called a student the N-word and is still teaching? Do you care about that? Do you think that's okay?
what do you think should happen?
I'm asking you, do you think it's okay?
Are we going to have a discussion here?
I want to know the name of this teacher who called the student the N-word, don't you?
No.
You don't care. Wow. You don't care that a teacher calls a student the N-word. That's unbelievable. An admission.
That is obviously not what I said. Okay, guys, we can do this on the panel. The 20 cameras at once leaning in, asking. No, 1, 2, 3,
This is
5, 6.
This is called sunlight. How does it feel?
It's not called sunlight.
What is it called?
What it's called is sleazy clickbaiting.
How about calling a student the N-word?
That has absolutely nothing to do with a real discussion over
Let's
what.
have a real discussion. We're having a real discussion.
Have a real discussion on the panel, James. Thank you for confirming.
The N-word, you heard it there.
Yeah. So a few points about that. First of all, even when nothing weird or stressful is going on, my hand does sometimes shake. Has since I was a kid. Project Veritas can't take credit for that, but since he mentioned it, be a weird thing to talk about in stream otherwise. But I'll mention it there. Second point, doctoring. Right? He used the phrase as doctoring. The word doctoring. Right? Is just not including something in a clip doctoring. I mean, we played unedited. There are no internal cuts whatsoever from the beginning of the video to the end of the first section, 54 seconds in. Right? And it's also not like the rest of the video is about this N-word incident. The N-word incident takes up maybe 10 seconds of the video, which I don't know. Do you remember how long the video was, the total Project Veritas video?
No, I don't, but I know that, I originally edited that, and I didn't even, I just, we talked about including a reasonable portion of it, and it wasn't like, I went in or you went in and saw that and was like, ooh, let's keep that out because, that's indefensible. Yeah. I mean, we even talked during the segment about, how it would be the same thing as and you're going to mention some of this later, but, about saying to a lawyer, you defended a murderer, you know what I mean? Right. So we even made the point.
So you must be pro-murder.
Right. Yeah. We went as far as to say, as, the point of due process isn't to say that, it's okay. because first of all, this is an incident from how long ago? Like he was like, we demand the name, but like it was from like, was it even
No, because
recent?
no, it was not at all recent. I mean, this is like the title of that video was New Jersey Teachers Union's Gone Wild. So, and like the whole thing was structured as a parody of a Girls Gone Wild commercial. And I don't think I've seen one of those commercials in many moons, right? You know, I mean, like I think the latest this could be is what, like 2010, and like at the time, they were already talking about an incident that was in the past. We don't even know how much longer it was before than that, right? I mean, like for all we know, this is like 2007 or something. I have no idea, right? So it's like this is what they're demanding, you know. So okay, so they say it's doctored, which is absurd, right? I mean, we just, you know, we didn't like we cut off the video at 54 seconds. This comes at like 1:30 or something, and it takes about 10 seconds. And they talk about a million other things before the end of the video. It's at least, I mean, I said half an hour there. It's probably not actually half an hour, but I'd be surprised if it was less than 10 minutes, certainly, right? You know, they talk about a bunch of other things over the course of those 10 minutes. So, so that's just to start with, you know, that it wasn't like the video was New Jersey teacher says the N-word gone wild, right? I mean, it was, you know, like this was a tiniest little part of it. And I think Jen, you know, I was talking to Jen about this earlier tonight after I got back to Atlanta, and she was like, yeah, whatever you didn't include, they would have said was the most important part, right? If I'd stopped it at a minute and 40 seconds, we'd included this, then it would have been some other fucking thing than the rest of the video that they said, oh, but that's so important. You didn't include that. You were doctoring it, you know, by not including it, you know, that the, like if we had included it, they would have gotten upset that we didn't include the thing about the, you know, the teacher who was like the drug use stuff, right? You know, that that which we talked about but didn't show, right? Like, so that's another thing. But also, I'm obvious, you know, so when I said the thing about the 20 cameras, which is an exaggeration, there were six people filming that I counted there. But I said that because like the other camera, the one I was, you know, the other of the big cameras, there were like 4 cell phone cameras going and the 2 big cameras. And the other, and you know, and like it wasn't just like people discreetly doing, right? You know, the other big camera, right? They were like leaning closer to me. I was like, okay, fuck off. We're done here, right? You know what I should have done in the first 10 seconds. But also like it's yeah, no, Jake is always doctoring things, but they have a really good union here at Give Them an Argument, so I can't fire him.
It's an addiction. I'm addicted to doctoring. I can't stop it. But yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah. But like also, you know, there's obviously no hint here that I'm okay with saying the N-word, right? There's nothing that comes within 10,000 miles of that anywhere in anything that I say, right? What do I say? That if you do something bad, you still deserve due process and the best defense you can get, right? The same way that if somebody in the criminal justice system is accused of something, right? You know, you still deserve a process to make sure that evidence is being heard, everybody's rights are being respected, no contract is being violated. And even if you unambiguously did it, which may, for all I know, be the case here, I don't know. I mean, I haven't gone back and read the New Jersey Star Ledger piece they referred to, right? So I don't know all the details about this incident. But even if it's exactly as bad as they're portraying it as being, right? Like, okay. I mean, the same way that a good lawyer will try to get their client a good deal, right? I mean, like, I think a good, strong union, you know, union representative, you know, will like, even if there's no disagreement about what happened, right, could still be like, well, is this a first offense? Can we try to argue for some lesser form of punishment? All of which is a good thing. I think we'd just have a much better society if we empowered workers more and it was harder to fire people. I mean, that, you know, like not impossible, but harder, right? You had to have a higher bar. And, you know, you like, even if you did something bad, if it's not like, you know, that like there are levels to badness, right? There are levels of different punishment you could get. And I'm obviously not laughing at the N-word. I'm laughing at the absurdity of the situation. That's how, like, you know, after I finally walked away, James actually followed me to the edge of the stage and like continued to kind of hector me. I guess none of this is in the video. Maybe they weren't filming at that point. But he said, "Oh, in my experience, laughter, you know, means people got caught." I was like, no, it doesn't, right? In your experience, and in my experience, and everybody's fucking experience, laughter is something that human beings tend to do in socially awkward situations when people are being weird, right? I mean, like that's Like I certainly, I mean, it's a little bit like the, I am enough of a good Midwestern boy that I'll say sorry when I mean fuck off and shut up while I'm talking. That's, I'll just say I'm sorry instead of that, right? It's kind of the same thing that it's like,
I mean, far be it from them using humor while discussing this topic, calling the fucking video teachers gone wild, teachers unions gone wild. I mean, they're using a satirical frame in their own video from in the first place, making it a comical topic. And I think that anybody reasonable watching that video knows that you weren't saying that it's okay for a teacher to say that. I think it's more that you didn't want to comment on it because who even knew what he was talking about, and you didn't have the facts of the case in front of you. So it's kind of sophomoric to ask you to comment
well,
on it.
Also, what he's doing at the end, right? He's not just asking for a comment on the thing itself. Which, look, if you want to comment on the thing itself, no. Do I know all the details of this case, or whether she was actually calling a student the N-word, which would be really bad, right? Or whether she was using it in some way that was like a lesser thing than that, which would still be bad, right? I mean, I don't think, I'm pretty firmly in the camp that, like, I don't care if you're quoting a Jay-Z lyric, you shouldn't say it, right? As a white guy, right? I mean, that's, it's just a bad look, right? Don't do that. Even if you're on the right side of the use mention distinction, it's still ill-advised, right? And not, and not a nice thing to do. But, like, I don't know where it was on that spectrum, right, between those two things. I don't know, again, if this was a one-time thing. I don't know, if she knew who was listening. Like, there are all kinds of things I don't know that could be relevant to what level of punishment is appropriate, right? But if the question is, should you be, like, allowed to say the N-word at work? No. I don't think that. Of course I don't think that, right? That's a good way to create a hostile work environment, right? You can't allow that, right? That's does that necessarily mean that I think that the maximum punishment should be the punishment in every case? No, not necessarily, right? I mean, this is, shit's complicated, right? And I think, was it appropriate in this case? Well, I don't know, right? We'd have to fill in a lot of those details, but whether it was or not, I mean, look. I think, actually, maybe this will just confirm how racist I am, but I think O.J. Simpson probably did it. I'll just say that. I think he is most likely guilty of murder. But I don't look at O.J. getting off and say, man, it really sucks that we have criminal defense attorneys. We should just abolish that, right? Should just, the prosecutor should just tell the judge what happened and they should decide the punishment, and that should be that, right? I think it's still good that we have a process and protections and all of that stuff. So even if, for the sake of argument, this teacher did deserve to have the book thrown at them, I'm still glad this process is in place. Also, somebody was pointing out, one of the social media discussions about this. I give them credit if I can remember who I'm, taking this from, but it's like, look, if you look at the role of labor unions in building what black middle class existed for much of the 20th century, right? If we're looking at the net effect of unionization on race, I mean, it's there's just no contest, right? Like whether that's been more of a positive or not. I mean, it's absurd, right? That, like, somebody who, let's say this teacher was the biggest asshole of all time, right? That person not completely losing their job, right, would be a very small cost, right, compared to the massive benefits for economic and racial equality of unionization. All of which seems pretty straightforward to me, but we are so I do want to play the clip we've got of the debate itself, but first to set this up with us a little bit, if he's ready, I want to bring on our friend, our comrade, our compañero down in Mexico, Mr. Jason Miles.
Hello.
What's up?
Jake, I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to officially meet at the thing.
Yeah. You were the man of the hour, or one of the men of the hour. So you were in high demand. But next time.
This going back and watching this. So I don't know if Ben said it. I missed the beginning of it. I don't know if Ben said it. Deep State Cuba and I were the esteemed guests of one Ben Burgess. And we made it a point to get to the debate discussion. I had no idea what to expect. I actually think neither one of us had any idea what to expect. We originally tried to get in with Anders Lee because we wanted to just, we figured it would be a bit of a lion's den, and we wanted to go there as deep as possible and just heckle. Part of me wishes I was backstage. That was like my original goal, was to get backstage. But the way the tickets were, actually, and I don't know if Ben knows this, we weren't allowed to sit together. I actually had the floor seats. I would have been in the front row, but Kuba wasn't going to be allowed to come. But they let me sit in the balcony with Kuba.
Okay.
So that's why we were in the balcony together. So
yeah, they were up in the balcony like Statler and Waldorf, like like just yelling shit. Which like for much of the debate, like I mean it was great. I loved it, right? But it was like James O'Keefe would like just say something crazy and dishonest, and Jason would just yell out, "That's not true."
So Ben gave us the heads up about what happened, and I've never seen Ben walk up that angry. It was like he had NWA in his walk up music or something, speaking in words, and he comes out and he's very frustrated. He's visibly frustrated. And what's frustrating is that I've never seen James O'Keefe. Really, I know a little bit about Project Veritas. It's not really something I dig. I know a little bit about Tim Pool. Again, not really a cat that I dig. But they were real smug. And as Ben came out, they were even like, "We got him." And I was like, "These guys suck." And we didn't realize it was a good amount of people at the event, but where we were in the balcony, literally, we were the only people. I guess. Well, we did meet another person there later that evening that was, I guess, on team leftist, and I don't even know what to call these people. My first thought was like right wingers, but they're not necessarily right wingers. I think they're more of the derivative of whoever was like the IDW people, right?
Yeah.
This is the new Sam Harris and
it's a sort of kind of thing that you could broadly call right wing, but they're not like conventional conservatives. Yeah, no, I think that's I think
they were a multiracial coalition. They're definitely were different ethnicities.
This other person that Jason's referring to, it was actually funny. We had the so after I was finally out, I was standing around with Jason and Kuba and this other person's name I'm not saying just because I don't know if they'd want to, but like and then somebody was like, "Oh, are you going to the after party?" I was like, "Fuck no, I'm not going to the after party." Are you crazy? I have had way more like dealing with lunatics for one day that I can. I'm gonna go have a beer with my friends, but this other person we just met because they were a GTAA fan. We invited them to come out with us, and we had beer, and they took some selfies, and they had a great, had some pizza with us. They had a good time. So we're good to our fans. I just want that to be known. But
what does that mean? The nightmare blunt rotation was that stage? It's like the worst you can imagine.
I also want people to know. So Ben has this real, I guess, fearless is a good way to say it. And I will say this: the good thing about what happened with the gotcha journalism that they tried to pull was that it was even offensive to some of the quote unquote right wing figures that were there. And
it was. I mean, there was at least one of the guests who I saw, and another I heard later, who were like, definitely non-left people who were there who were like, what? You can't do that. What are you doing?
Didn't make any, like, the whole thing was, it was really cheap, right? And O'Keefe is just so slimy, and he can't not be slimy. And he talks out of both sides of his mouth, but there are people there that really believe that he was some sort of truth teller. Like, people were literally yelling at us, and people were also yelling at me at Cuba. So this is another thing. I definitely want to say this.
And I should say too, the heckling, like, there was a ton of heckling the other way, right? Like, I mean, this was like Jason and Kuba putting up a good fight, but like
against the auditorium, right? It's us.
yeah, yeah.
And Kuba looks over at me after the first boo or whatever, the first like, because I can't shut up. And Kuba goes, "Aren't you a little worried? Because we're kind of in the lion's den." And I yelled out, "Man, fuck these people. They ain't finna do nothing. Fuck them." And they don't do. They were terrified. Dude, Jake, I'm not joking. If I wish Kuba was here, the auditorium of these people and just us two, and they were terrified because I literally looked at them and was like, "They're not going to do anything. Fuck them." And they were like, "Oh." I was like, "You better call Antifa." Sit your ass right there because you're not going to do anything. And I was a little worried because Ben is mildly crazy and he's at a certain point in his career where he should probably be exiting through the back door. And so I'm waiting for Ben to tell me, "Oh, Jason, meet me around back." No, Ben goes, "Oh, I'm in that lobby area." And he just walked out the front where all these cats are. And I think because he didn't try to backpedal, he didn't back down on anything he said. He stayed very firm in his belief that, first of all, I don't understand the context in which the N-word was said. So
Right.
quit acting like you're so righteous about anybody saying a word. Like your whole thing is gotcha bullshit. I won't get into it, but there's a friend of ours that's a professor that was telling me a story about a teacher who was literally teaching, if it wasn't Reconstruction, it was like civil rights history at the college level, that read a sign with the N-word in it, and they read N-word. They were a white person, and one of the students said they felt assaulted.
Right.
I mean, that's the level that we're talking about here when it comes to that word. And I'm not saying that this was the same situation with this teacher. I don't know.
Yeah.
The point is, we just can't say willy-nilly, well, someone said this, ergo they must be destroyed, doxxed, and everything else.
Yeah.
Because also this same guy who's so down for N-word sayers and users to be doxxed also was bragging about defending some guy that didn't like critical race theory being used at Hasbro Corporation. So he would say things one time and people would go crazy. And then at one point, because he would say, "I don't doctor any videos. These videos are 100% raw footage." 20 minutes later, he says, "Well, of course I have to edit these videos. We can't just put raw videos up there." And I yelled out, "But I thought you don't doctor the videos." He was terrified.
Yeah.
Because he's so full of shit. And then like the last thing Tim Pool said was that he heard the unedited version of Trayvon Martin's murder, and he knows that the whole story wasn't told. I yelled out, "That's not true, because you must not have heard that footage." I had to actually listen to that footage and footage of about like 8 other kind of shocking murders like that, more police murders, for an art project a professor had wanted me to work on. And they had the raw footage for that. And it's really disturbing
I'll bet.
to listen to that stuff. There is nothing that is going to get edited out that's going to be an aha moment for when these things happen. These people are just clowns. I mean, Tim Pool literally said he wakes up in the morning and looks at Twitter to see the news. And I was like, "Word? That's the news for you? You don't like read a newspaper or something like that? That's interesting." And then he says, "Well, I read a few different news sources and then I decipher what the truth is." I was like, "That's what you do? That's weird. Like, who does that?" But they're clowns. And these people that were there were like, "Well, these guys," and people were literally saying that. They were like, what did someone say? "Yeah, Tim Pool, James O'Keefe, they're the truth." And I was like, that's a sad state of affairs if you think these motherfuckers are the truth, man.
Yeah. I did admit, and people will see that I also have a bad habit of checking Twitter first thing when I wake up in the morning. I shouldn't do it. It's a terrible thing to do, but I do. It's bad for my mental health. That's probably why what's ever wrong. I'd like to put a positive spin on walking out through the alley. I'm like our friend Alfie Brown later suggested that it was like Fidel will just walk around the streets of Havana, or did, it's like, no, the people are my bodyguards, right? I'll be all right, but I don't know. I will say several people did seem to respect it, but
that was actually like mildly uncomfortable at first because I was like off to the side, like, oh shit, we're gonna have to fight tonight. Because people were walking up to Ben. I was like, oh shit. But no, they just actually really respected it. A lot of people wanted to shake Ben's hand. A few guys, those like super New York guys, appreciated a different perspective.
Yeah, that is actually true. There's guys who, it was funny, right? Because they kind of like sounded like sort of New York stock characters in a movie, but it was cool, right? They were like, no, I've never heard that perspective before about workers' rights and everything were laid out, and yeah, no, I think that was really good. I should also say before I give Jake a chance to add, I think he wants to add, and before we move on to the actual clip that's available from the debate itself, that that, like, to my mind, it's not even just that we don't, know exactly what happened, right? It's also that, like, I don't know. Look, I think there's a point, it's not in these 11 minutes we've got right now, but there's a point where we're talking about like the FBI raiding James O'Keefe, and I basically said, I didn't quite put it this way, although at that point in the debate I wasn't far off. Yeah, sure. There are lots of pieces of shit who are mistreated by the FBI. Like that's, like I'm always, I could be against that and also recognize what you are, right? I don't think I said piece of shit at any point in the debate. I do.
No,
I did not. So that, that's restraint. That's like sorry, but I did. I will admit, I think I did call him a gutter level snitch at one point, but that was, but I didn't say piece of shit. So, but I will also say that in like there is more to it than that, right? It's like okay. I wouldn't go so far as to say we could just like shut down every prison and let everybody out, right? Like I think you probably need some form of, some way of separating truly dangerous people from society, and exactly what that would look like in a better society is a complicated question, all this stuff. But like, I do think the criminal justice system should be way more humane, way more, attentive to the rights of defendants than it is now. And that doesn't just mean, right, while they're on trial to see if they did it or not. Like it should be more humane to people who did it, right? Like I think that, and more focused on rehabilitation, right, bringing people back into society. And those are pretty standard leftist positions, but I do want to spell out what that means because I think not everybody has thought about this, right? That means that people who did things that are even worse than using the N-word, rape, murder, right, stuff like that, should actually, there should be some kind of process, right, where like you can at least, have the potential of rehabilitation and getting a second chance and, and all that stuff, right? And if you're not prepared to do that for like the worst people, then you're not really serious about the criminal justice reform stuff, right? So many people have this idea in their heads that it's like, oh, if we just let out everybody who's in there for like first time, like weed smoking, that would be like half of prison. It would not. Right? That's
you need to stop reading New Jim Crow.
Prisons, not everybody, right? But like, if you really want to cut down the prison population, you actually have to let out a lot of people who really did bad stuff, right? And but like, okay, right? I think human beings can really, really badly mess up, and there should be some consequence, but that also shouldn't necessarily destroy your life forever. And which also ties into, I guess the last thing I'll say about the Project Veritas video before we watch what we've got in the debate, which is like what he's conflating there at the end is me saying no, where the question is, do you want to know this teacher's name? Right? Me saying I don't care about that. Just me saying, oh, it's totally fine to say the N-word, in front of students. I love the N-word. I should, like everybody should be saying the N-word all the time. It's like
he's gonna cut that. He's gonna cut that clip.
I love the N-word. Yeah, it's weird that I'm not saying it. It's weird that I'm saying the N-word because I love it so much. But I mean, but like, look, the fact that I don't want somebody to be doxxed and like have their life ruined, like, 10 years later, 15 years later, over, maybe it's like they were like reading a quote from Martin Luther King or something and they didn't censor it. Maybe it's that. Maybe it was really bad, right? Maybe they did something really bad, but like somebody,
Michael Richardson shit.
yeah, maybe it was some Michael Richards stuff, right? I mean, that's, yeah, I don't know.
Did the comedy union protect Michael Richards after that set?
Yeah.
It's like that Chappelle bit where he's like, I felt bad for him as a comedian. He was having.
Yeah. He was like, as a black man, I was watching that. I was like, oh, you can't say that. But then the comedian part of me was like, ooh, Kramer's having a bad set. You'll get through this, Kramer. Yeah, maybe it was some Michael Richards thing, right? In which case it's bad and there should have been some punishment. But like, I also don't, even if it was, right? I don't think that should like, I don't think we should have some like online mob justice 15 years later, right? For some teacher nobody's ever heard of who like did a really bad thing once, right? Like you could do a really bad thing once. And, I think I made the point about that. Does anybody have anything else to add about that before we watch the clip for the debate?
Just real quick on the point of, trying to create a kinder society, a kinder, more humane society. I think like, seeing that it happened to you, we had just hung out and I saw this video and I was reading these comments and, it's just kind of disturbing because I think that, most of the comments and the vibe is like, they're, if you really think about it rationally, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but they're pinpointing on things like, oh, he looks stressed or he looks nervous. And it's really just about intimidation, right? It's almost like, it's not it's not physical violence, but it's a violence of shoving a microphone and ambushing you. And it's really just about, I think to his fans, the point is sort of to try to do a gotcha, but more to show that he could dominate you, with some kind of intensity. And I just think that it's upsetting to see. And I feel like, if you're really trying to have sunlight and have the truth come out, you're willing to talk to anybody about anything, basically, right? In terms of like have an actual exchange of ideas. But to think that that's a good way to bring out the truth, a nuanced point, whether it's left-wing gotcha journalism or right-wing, I'm not saying this only exists on the right, although it's probably worse. I just think that that's so far away from like this type of society that we want to create that it was just kind of sad to see. But I was glad that you weren't actually shaken up too much, and we're excited to do the show today. So I was happy because like I just didn't like seeing that as a friend and someone who knows that you do have good intentions. So
no, I mean I was super pissed off in the moment, as you're about to see, but I mean, look, again, I don't like. She tells me that she's fine too, right? That like she was actually having fun with like messing with the trolls on Instagram, but like I don't like that some of it spilled out to Jed. That part upsets me, but like other than that, right? Like, I mean, okay, the worst person in the world tried to like do this thing. You actually watch it. I'm clearly not saying what he says I'm saying. And then, like, I don't know. I mean, I kind of think it's not a horrible message to send if he's going to have all of the bots or, for the sake of argument, humans spreading these identical messages. Like, if he's going to have them spread around, have like hundreds of thousands of people like see some, I don't know. I think it's not the worst thing for him to like spread this advertisement for the general point of view that, hey, who wants to like have a more forgiving society and make it harder to fire people? Who doesn't like doxing? The socialist left.
Yeah.
Who?
I think that came out. I actually think that came out in the messaging because James O'Keefe during this debate, and I don't want to call it a debate. It really wasn't a debate. it was a bit of an ambush job from start
Yeah.
to finish. From the panels I saw the panel before Ben's as well. And he was bragging about truth to power that he does, but he's not breaking any stories that are taking down corporations. He's
Right.
not breaking any stories that are taking down, high-ranking political figures. All he's doing is kind of taking down the little guy, and they're trying to uphold a narrative of anyone on the left is very weak and feeble-minded, and they believe in fairy tales. And
Yeah.
so for Ben to come out, it's kind of kind of a good thing that he was so angry. Because he was so firm in those convictions, that I just think that for the people that did come up, and there was a good amount of people that came up to Ben after the show and thanked him for being there. I don't even know if they don't know what they agree with him, because the people that they agree with don't really say what they don't like, because they use amorphous terms like corruption. What is corruption? Politics in general is corruption. It is the private and the public working kind of hand in hand, and you're going to have some corruption inherently in politics, right? So for these cats to be like, Tim Pool at one point says, well, all unions are corrupt. I was like, well, how? Like, explain to me how. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying, explain to me the mechanism of the
Well, I
corruption.
mean, he's yeah, right. I mean, what he said is you'll see what he says. It's not quite as sweepy as that, but it's still like, well, I don't know why you think that. I don't know what you mean. I can't really challenge it because like you're just like appealing to personal experiences I don't share, right? But I should say also, I agree with Jake. I wouldn't use the word violence just because I want to. I try to be real careful about that word, right?
No, I was a little loose. I mean, it was intimidation of some sort.
Yeah, no, I
aggression.
think it was an attempt at intimidation. I think that's actually correct, right? That's like I think that I think the ideal outcome from James's perspective would have been me being like fuck this and just leaving the theater, right? And I'm sure that like I'm sure that was his like I'm sure that was factored in. I'm sure he thought there was a good chance that would happen, and he would have loved it, right? I mean, because it's like, oh, see, I'm not actually willing to to do this, right? So but yeah, no, I think there's definitely an element of intimidation. The whole setup, right? We're gonna like lure you into this like place with like the big bright cameras and like 20 of us all standing around and nobody's there with you, and like all all that stuff, right? I mean, it all kind of screamed that. At best, it's an attempt to like shake me up a little bit, before it happens. I should also say, when he followed me to the stage after I walked away, he also did basically threaten to like try to mess with my employment at Morehouse. He didn't use those words, but what he said was, "We'll definitely be talking to other Morehouse professors about you," which is like, in this case, is kind of a hilarious misfire because I'm not going to talk out of school about salary and all that stuff, but like I'm an adjunct. This is Morehouse is like the smallest, like out of all the different things I'm doing right now, that's like the smallest piece of my income is teaching that like one class at a time as an adjunct at Morehouse. So if James O'Keefe spread around a bunch of shit about me at Morehouse and they didn't offer me another class, that would make me sad. I wouldn't like it. Right? I love my students at Morehouse. I think it's been really good. But like, wouldn't actually mess with my life very much, which is a good thing. But all right. So we could bring on Adnan Husain, chat with him for a second, and then we're going to watch the clip from the debate.
Hey.
Hey.
How are you all doing?
Good.
Yeah, well, I guess this is a lesson in lying down with dogs. I guess you come up with, you're a better man than I for doing it, Ben. I mean, you're.
Yeah, I mean, I was expecting a few fleas. This is maybe more than I thought. Which
Yeah.
I was going to get, but yeah, let's watch. Let's watch some of the. So what we're going to watch right now is what is out there right now, right? So the whole debate hasn't been released yet. The nanosecond it is, we'll certainly play it here. but this is like the first 11 minutes, which is what's out right now.
James O'Keefe. Ben Burgess. And last but not least, Tulsi Gabbard.
All right. So when you guys wake up in the morning, you got your coffee, you look at your computer, you look at your phone. What's your process? I want to know, from on a personal level, like how you're sorting out what the hell's going on in the world.
I wake up, my alarm goes off. I immediately pick up my phone and I open Twitter and I just start scrolling through and then I go, I'm not joking. And then I'm like, well, that happened. And then I sit there in bed lying up for about a half an hour. And then I, get to work. And then I'm like, wow, I can't believe it. I woke up to that.
James?
Well, I'm banned from Twitter, so. But distribution by proxy. You know what I mean? I try to read a little bit of everything and try to read between the lines. That's the short of it.
Tulsi.
I wait a little while before I start scrolling through the news, catch my breath and take care of, my personal time. And but I mean, Twitter is definitely not the first thing I go and look at. I'll scroll through a number of different news sources from across the spectrum and try to get an average on what's going on in the world and then take it from there.
All right.
Well, I wish I could say that my answers was Tulsi's because that sounds much healthier. But the sad reality is I'm much closer to Tim.
It's such a depressing way to start the day, though, guys.
But to be fair, Twitter actually is good when you're not just arguing with people. So there's real value in Twitter in that I have a list of people I follow, news organizations, activists, and personalities, left, right, and center. And so when I wake up, I'll see what CNN said. Then I'll see what maybe the Examiner said. And then seeing both perspectives coming from, establishment or maybe a left or a right source, then I'll have to figure out which one is actually closer to the truth. That's how I start breaking down the stories.
So we just had a little backstage extravaganza that I just wanted to touch on. Ben.
Sure. So if you think about media manipulation, then, and you particularly, if part of your concern is about social media manipulation, is about censorship, then you should think, well, okay, if you actually care about understanding the source of the problem, if you care about solutions, then you should think about what are people really worried about. We live in, despite being a wildly economically unequal society that's not very democratic in many ways, we live in enough of a democracy that by and large people aren't worried about getting arrested. What are they worried about? They're worried about getting fired. Why are they worried about getting fired? Because the majority of Americans work in at-will employment situations in non-unionized workplaces where the boss can fire them at any time with no recourse and no due process. If you agree that this is a problem, right? And if you don't agree with that, I don't take you seriously on free speech. If you agree that that's the problem, what's the solution? Well, every member of every worker in every workplace in the United States should be a member of a union, because when you're a member of a union, you actually have due process. You actually have an organization that will represent you when you're accused of wrongdoing, the same way that a lawyer will represent you when you are accused of wrongdoing in the criminal justice system.
Have you ever been in a union?
So people aren't going to be afraid of getting arbitrarily fired. So in thinking about this, leading up to it, I was watching a series of videos that Mr. James O'Keefe here did early in Project Veritas, where no, absolutely. So early in Project Veritas, where what is he doing? Is he sending in his little hidden cameras to CEOs meeting to talk about union busting strategy or generals talking about drone strikes. No, he's surveilling ordinary working class people in order to demonize unions to make it easier to fire people. So he did this series called New Jersey Teachers Unions Gone Wild. And in that series...
Thanks for the free advertising.
Yeah. No, I think everybody should absolutely watch these videos to understand who and what James is. And in these videos, he's doing two things, right? So one of them is he's asking union officials, "Oh, would you defend me if I did this? Would you defend me if I did that?" Which is like asking a lawyer, "Would you defend me if I was accused of murder? Would you defend me if I was accused of double murder?" Yes, that's what a lawyer is, and it's a good thing. You can't be in prison arbitrarily. It's a good thing. You can't be fired arbitrarily. And in one of these videos, out of the many, many sleazy things he did, we didn't highlight this in the clip we did on my show. I wish we had. But in one of these videos, I do wish I had, because I think it's an instructive case. So in one of these videos, he's talking about a teacher who was accused of saying the N-word, and then I don't remember exactly what the disciplinary process were, but they didn't completely lose their job. And he was taking this as, "Oh, see, unions think it's okay to say the N-word," which is obviously asinine, obviously thinking that somebody's career shouldn't be ended over doing a bad thing is not the same as saying the bad thing is bad. So just now, just before we went on, a gentleman came up to me with a demeanor that suggested that, no indication whatsoever. Yeah, I'm being nice. No indication whatsoever that he was affiliated with James or Project Veritas. His demeanor strongly suggested that he was part of the staff organizing this event. Said, "Oh, can I speak to you for a moment before the panel?" And so I came back with him. They did their thing, their entrapment journalism thing. And in the course of it, they said, one of the things that James said is, "Do you care about finding out the name of this teacher?" And I said, "No, because I do not. Because I don't think that if you did a bad thing at some point in your life, you deserve to be nationally named and shamed years later, whatever consequence you might have had at the time, whatever chance for rehabilitation there might have happened." And James, being the supreme media manipulator he is, responded to this by saying, "Oh, why do you think it's okay to use the N-word?" Which is obviously not what I said. But then again, James is a liar, so that is in character.
Evans. James.
So the video can't allege anything. It's an inanimate recording. It quoted the woman, Alyssa Ploshnik, union official in New Jersey, saying the N-word. She actually said the word. And she said that a teacher was still teaching after calling the student the N-word. As a journalist, isn't it a journalist's ethical duty to find out who that teacher is and report it?
No, obviously.
All right. Hold on.
Of a journalist.
Bring it in, Tim. You started this conversation with a political ideological statement from you about the importance of unions, completely irrelevant to media manipulation. You started your
irrelevant to media
Absolutely. You started the argument from an ideological perspective.
A perspective about media.
Have you ever been in a union? Just side question.
Yeah.
Which one? When?
I was in a couple. I've been in the.
Which one?
I've been in the UFCW, and when I was working at Meyer in Michigan, and
accepted. I didn't believe you. I couldn't imagine, based on what you'd said, that'd been true. Because I've been in two unions. I was in the Transport Workers Union, and I worked at a grocery store as well, which also had a grocery workers union. And they were so corrupt that I was like, the statement you made is just like your perspective I can respect. That's coming from you, but it's like a blanket subjective perspective. But I don't want to have an argument.
Not at all subjective.
I don't want to have an argument about union.
However corrupt that union might have been that you were part of,
two of them.
If you had been accused of an infraction subject to disciplinary process, then you would have had the option of having them represent you in that process. That
Wrong.
Okay.
Bro.
Okay, let's pause.
I don't want to get into an argument about unions other than to say like.
Yeah, let's not slip into a debate here. You know, I mean, if we're not careful, there's going to be a debate that's going to break out about, you know, the sort of fundamental things we disagree about. What a strange thing that could happen in this debate. But 3 points about this. First, it is a shame he got me off it before I said that, you know, because I listed off the first union that I was ever part of, which was UFCW 1951 at Meyer, Michigan. But then the next thing I was going to say was that for 2 years, I was actually a elected low-level official in a union in New Jersey. In fact, a teachers union in New Jersey. The AAUP AFT branch for adjunct professors at Rutgers, right? So, which I'm actually still a member of now, right? But because I'll still teach online classes on and off at Rutgers. So yeah, I mean, I have been, I've spent years and years of my life as a union member, and included a couple of years as a union official. So that's just one thing worth saying. Second thing worth saying is he's just completely ignoring the connection that was drawn between those two subjects, right? I'd actually that morning, I'd even called the moderator, Bill Ottman, be like, well, okay, I want to be real clear. I want to make sure I'm really clear on the subject here, right? What are the things you're putting under the heading of media manipulation? What do you mean by that phrase? And one of the things they said, was social media manipulation, censorship, right? It's like, all right, well, look, if we're talking about censorship, then there's this connection that I just spelled out there in great detail, and I was damn well going to make that argument because this is the primary argument that I came to this debate to make, right? That James O'Keefe's union busted and his alleged commitment to free speech are incompatible. Third point, so I mean, he says oh, that's ideology, which is, ridiculous because, yeah, right. I'm not a journalist. I've never claimed to be a journalist at any point in my life, right? I'm an opinion columnist, right? That's not a journalist, right? I'm a political polemicist, right? That's what I do, right? To the extent that I do all this stuff and not just teach classes. They which by the way is also what Tim Pool is, right? Tim Pool's not a journalist.
They like calling themselves that, though. That was the whole thing.
Yeah, no, they love calling themselves that, right? I don't understand what they mean by it, to be honest. But
James O'Keefe kept comparing himself to Cy Hirsch. Compared himself to someone else.
Yeah,
who it was.
Well, the last point I want to make was just okay, on what basis does Tim Pool? Sorry, they're agreeing so much in here. I'm getting, I was getting my wires crossed. On what basis does Tim Pool believe that neither of those unions he was in? He says they're corrupt. I don't know what he means by corrupt. I don't know what the evidence is for the corruption. I don't know what kind. I don't know any of that stuff. Right? Nobody does. He just used the word, and we're all supposed to take it at face value. But there are some very corrupt unions. Right? They'll still provide a lot of protection against wrongful termination, right? I don't know what basis he has for believing that if he had been threatened with his job, right, that there wouldn't have been a union rep to guide him through the process, that he couldn't have filed a grievance, right? Was he actually fired from both of those jobs and neither of the unions helped him, even though he asked? If not, I don't know why he believes this. Did he know people who were fired? And they asked, but there was a union rep who would help them with that and file a grievance and all that stuff. To be honest, I doubt it, right? I think he's just making a flying leap from, well, they seem corrupt to me, to therefore, I'm sure they wouldn't have done this thing that just legally, right? The structure of union representation is yeah, absolutely. They would have done to the best of their ability. But anyway, enough for me talking. We have an actual union organizer on the screen here if Jake wanted to weigh in on any of this.
No, I mean, whether a union is corrupt, I mean, obviously that union corruption has, occurred before. I mean, I think it's always a little bit funny because comparing it to the prevalence of business corruption, I can't pull up a stat for that, but I think it's it's an organization, and organizations can have problems. So I would never say, I would be the last person as a leftist in the union movement to say that unions can't be better. But in terms of whether it's just ideological, you were pointing out an objective fact, which is that unions save people's jobs, right? Which is could objective, I've, met many people and met many chief stewards, right, at different companies who save people's jobs probably every week or at least every month. So the fact that unions have this role in society, you can debate how effective they are at it. But you can't debate that this is the role of a union in society, and that thousands of people probably owe the existence or continued existence of their jobs to their union representation. So it's not, are unions good? Are unions corrupt? Are they good force in society? That's ideological. But you were bringing up something that is, as close as objective as you can get. And, I think that he just he doesn't want to debate. He could debate that, yes, that is true, but actually, you can make the debate, maybe they save too many people's jobs, or it's not competitive.
Which, by the way, was James's argument, right? I mean, the point of James's video is that they save too many jobs. That can't be true if the function of a union isn't, among other things, to make it harder to terminate you, because it's like, I mean, that's probably not a great metaphor to throw around in a discussion where union corruption has come up, but it's like being a made man, right? They can still whack you. They just need to sit down in a good reason, right? It can't just be that, like, you're in the bar and you say something that, like, that the Joe Pesci character doesn't like, and and he just comes back and kills you, right? Like, it has to, you have to have a good reason. You have to go through a process. You have to show that you have just cause for termination, right? Like, these things are actually just legal facts, and certainly sociological facts about how union representation works.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like, to the point of free speech, which is that, as an at-will employee, you can be fired for your speech, right? Because you could basically be fired for anything except for something that's like a protected category, right? So this is just making sure that if you are fired, you're fired to something that, you and your coworkers bargain a contract with management that show that this means you are not doing the job, right? So you still have to do your job, but you don't have to worry about, or at least as much about, like, tweeting something that your boss doesn't like, and and them firing you, like, or speaking up against Elon Musk and having him fire you. You know what I mean? Like, if they had a union. So it's a pretty ridiculous argument to make, and Tim Pool didn't even want to. Like you said, they're making both arguments at the same time.
Right? Yeah. Is it that they save too many jobs, or it's just not even true? It's ideological, right, to say that they save jobs.
I think they would say they only save people's jobs who didn't deserve it. But then every single, they were just evil people that they're doing this for no reason. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, I thought, you came out with such a generous and open overture there, Ben, to try and find some common ground with Tim Pool. You said, your life is a little bit more like waking up with Tim Pool. You're clearly trying to, forge some common ground, and no good deed goes unpunished. He just comes right after you with this business about it being ideological. The only thing that was ideological, I think, from his perspective, is that you actually think unions are a good thing, and somehow that's very ideological. You tried to show how, in free speech terms, everyone on the panel should agree that, having, but I guess they actually do believe that the employer should have that authoritarian power and control, to just get rid of you at will. They're happy with that. They don't believe in democracy extending to the workplace. This is the real problem that they have. But I also think that it's clear that I didn't get to see this. Obviously, this is something that happened in New York, but I did get to see the posted video that Project Veritas put out of their ambush before the panel. And it seems clear that people on the panel, well, like Tim Pool and James O'Keefe, tried to do a little background work to figure out, how they might go at you, and noticed that you did some videos on them and were completely unprepared to actually take on the arguments you made. So they tried to manufacture other ways to sort of discount what you're saying. And in fact, actually, you gave them advance warning, really, of what you wanted to discuss, what you thought the key issues were. I mean, you didn't come into this debate and try and ambush them. You put it out there ahead of time, and they still weren't willing or able to actually confront you on the arguments that you actually make, criticizing their positions. I think that's really what was going on here. is just trying to discount the issues because they had nothing to really say about the actual issues, which is why all he can say, Tim Pool, is that unions are corrupt. I mean, I don't think he really actually had any real genuine experience of their corruption. That's just the stereotype of what you say to criticize unions, is you say they're corrupt. I mean, so that's why he couldn't actually respond to your point about what a union could do for you. He couldn't actually engage that. He just had to say, no, they didn't. No, they wouldn't, because he had to stick with this position that unions are bad without actually engaging the substance of what unions, actually do in the workplace.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I mean, it's and I mean, it's such a, I mean, especially from Tim Pool, right? Because this is a guy who loves using corporate, right, as like as a put down, right? It's like, well, okay, do you actually want to decrease the power of those corporations or not, right? That's I think that's a real like rubber meets the road issue there. And you're right on that. I mean, there's a reason, beyond the fact that whatever, we thought it'd be a good show. Right, there's a reason that we covered all this on Monday, right before the debate. That like I wanted to, make as clear as possible in advance, right? What what my case is, because I wanted to steer as much of the debate as possible to talking about this, because I think this is the real stuff. I think you can I mean, I don't know what it would have been like if all this hadn't happened. Right. But it's like, I was like imagining a version of the debate where we just spent the entire, debate arguing about, whether, I don't know, Twitter, and its mysterious algorithms were, more unfair to liberals or conservatives, or, whether whatever stupid little narrative they're pushing on Fox News this week is like a little bit more inaccurate or a little bit less inaccurate than whatever stupid little narrative they're pushing on MSNBC. And it's like, I don't care about that stuff at all, right? I mean, I think like every minute you spend talking about those things is like a minute you're never getting back, and it's just a horrible waste of everybody's time, right? I mean, if I was going to talk about media manipulation, I want to talk about things that actually matter, right? Like, look, MSNBC is owned by Comcast. Fox News is owned by the Murdoch family. Little bits and pieces of Twitter are owned by BlackRock and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and a bunch of American rich people. That's like, and how can you counteract the power of those corporations? Well, organizing the working class. I mean, it's a pretty basic, for somebody like, for people like us, it's a pretty basic point. I mean, but this is the case I really want to make. But we have, I think, like less than 2 minutes left of the available preview, so let's just bust through this.
Your subjective perspective.
It's not subjective. It's a fact that the effect of unions is to give you due process.
And sometimes they don't, because humans are fallible. But I digress.
Okay, but you can say the same thing about having trial by jury, that like sometimes it's not a good due process.
So the issue is
still a due process.
We're talking about media manipulation. Instead of addressing the issue of what you take with James O'Keefe, his approach and his video, you took a few minutes to go on about the importance of unions and the seriousness of individuals. Right away, that's a red flag. I don't take your argument as seriously because you're trying to make a political, ideological statement, not a journalistic one.
Well, first of all, obviously, Tim, I am, like you, very much in the business of politics and ideology, but also what I was doing was I was explaining the context of the disagreement with James that caused him to do his...
Right, your disagreement is that you think James is opposed to unions and his actions are based on opposition to unions, and not that he had a question about a teacher using a racial slur. That is irrelevant to the question of, hey, here's a video you didn't show.
It's not irrelevant. Everybody agrees you shouldn't use racial slurs. The question is, if you do, should you have protection when you're about to be fired for it? Should you have a due process? Should you, as a person who once did something bad, have your name spread over all of media throughout the entire country because you once did something bad in your life? And I don't think so. That's a question of values, but that is the context.
So that's what they've made available so far. That was just a little preview when, like, this was when he was actually streaming, right? They made the stream public for the first 11 minutes and then paywalled it. The whole video is going to be out eventually, and we'll certainly play it when it is, but just yeah, I think Tim Pool doesn't like politics or ideology. He only likes journalism. We could maybe leave that without comment. But before Jake and Jason go, I do want to talk a little bit about something maybe a little bit happier than this, which is the next day in New York, right? So I came to New York to do two things, and I was all out of bubble. No, I came to New York to do two things. One is this on Saturday that you just watched the available preview of, and then the other thing was on Sunday. So two of the three people in here, the other one's excused because he's in Canada. Two of the three people here were at the event on Sunday, and Jason was actually like kind of emceeing a lot of it. So what was going on Sunday was a party. It was at a bar in Brooklyn. It was the lunch party, and it was like co-sponsored by this Revolution podcast, which Jason and the aforementioned Dr. Kuba are both part of. But it was a launch party for Norman Finkelstein's new book, and which is, I think, I'll burn this bridge when I come to it. Is that right?
I'll burn this bridge when I get to it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so which is a great name, and there were a couple of panels there.
Finkelstein impersonations before I introduced him.
I've never. I mean, if you've got a Finkelstein impression up your sleeve, I'll certainly hear it.
I don't know if you saw that, Jake. So Norman Finkelstein, who I actually really like Norm, and I have great conversations with Norm. But Norm is a whirlwind, and he does not hold back at this point in his life. And he, like our first conversation on the phone, he tells me, he says, "Do not text me. I do not have a cellular." I'm sorry, my voice is kind of gone. I can't really do it. "I do not have a cellular phone. If you text me, I will not get your text. You must call at this time." And so when I finally called Norm, and I was a little nervous to call him because all I know about Norm Finkelstein is him yelling at that white girl on that on that YouTube.
Oh, I love this. Actually, if we have this, we should show it.
That is in Canada, actually. Just yeah, it's like McMaster University, I believe. Yeah, outside of Toronto and Hamilton.
That's all I knew about Norm, and he's very serious. When he goes on shows, he's a very serious man. So I'm a little nervous about the phone call, and so he gets on the phone. I call. He knows I'm calling at a certain time, and he says, and I said, "Hi, this is Jason from this Revolution. Teray told me about we talked. Yeah, the email. Oh yes." He actually said this. He said, "You are the one on the show that is the funny guy with the learned man." You called me the dumb guy and Pascal the smart guy? Is how you're gonna start this off?
What do you mean funny? Funny how?
And I'm sorry, my voice is gone from yesterday and actually yelling at this thing. There was a lot of yelling that night. Between that and us yelling later that night. But and after that, we kind of just hit it off. And I actually do talk to Norm just to talk to him because he's just so funny and interesting, and he knows a lot. And so I gave a very long introduction. I talked about our first conversation, and when he came on our show, yelling about pronouns, how we were all, and then yelled and called Paul Prescott Talcum X. You are the teacher, correct? Talcum X. We were like, oh my god!
Yeah. By the way, Strom, whose chat is on the screen right now, was at this event, and I recognized him. I've never seen a photo of Strom or video, but I recognized him immediately because he looks exactly like the little cartoon image of him in that profile. That's just what he looks like. I was like, I know you, but yeah, the thing, it's it is an amazing clip. The McMaster's university talk where there's some very like Hasbarish, like it's like there's it's I don't know exactly, but it sort of screams like student Zionist organization, lots of like coordination in advance about how they were going to do this kind of thing, where this girl comes up and she's like, she's getting upset at him, right, for invoking the memory of Nazism, and in denouncing, war crimes in, West Bank and Gaza, and in this very firm way, he's like, no, sorry, right, I don't like, if you really cared about, and he goes through all of his family members who are in the death camps, right, it's like his parents, right, he goes through this like super heavy family history. He's like, look, you don't get to yell at me about this, motherfucker, right? I mean, not that he put it that way, right? But I have a
You might as well have.
he really might as well have, right? It's like, you don't get to yell at me about this, right? If there's anybody who knows, about this, right? One there, right? This is me. But if you take seriously, right? You take that never again the way you should, right? You should be against, the dehumanization and degradation and oppression of everybody, right? Is essentially the point he's making, which I think is like spot on. And I mean, it's very like, I think there's some really useful moral clarity there. But okay, so it's Norman Finkelstein's new book, right? That's what the whole thing's for. There are a couple of panels that are going on that day, and were those filmed, by the way? I was a little unclear on that.
No, there should be audio, but I don't know if anyone took the audio feed that we had got all night. They probably at least got yours.
Okay.
Ours, totally.
Okay, yeah. So I was on a panel. I was on the first panel. So it was me, Sean KB, Antifada has been a guest on this show, and Margaret Kimberly, the Black Agenda Report, and Alfie Brown, right?
Alfie, yeah.
Yeah. And it's there were points where in a friendly way it was like, there was some disagreement. It was a little, like Sean, who I'm a big fan of, he will be a guest on the show again, right? But it's like he said something about specifically wanted to call himself a communist, and I said that a communist in 2022 is just a socialist who thinks socialism sounds better on vinyl. But in any case, but like there was also a lot of agreement, and it was a really interesting discussion about free speech. I felt bad about it because it was like, look, this is where, like, after that nightmare, at the Beacon Theater, like I was actually among friends and comrades, but like I'm like, I will admit,
you're wound up.
Yeah, it's like I mean, well, it's like I also just feel a little bad because it's like, it's like I spent so much time preparing, for the thing with all the right wingers, like I spent so much time researching, looking into it. I don't think I ever opened up Doug's email, about our panel. I got high with like somebody in like our extended podcasting family.
Oh, that's right.
like I was, like we were like getting stoned outside the venue like half an hour before it started. It's like the
we were talking before the panel, and I turned to my girlfriend and I was like, do you think Ben's high right now? He's about to do a panel. But then you started talking so eloquently, and I was like, oh, I guess he's I guess you could do this in your sleep, you know what I mean? But I was like just chilling there. I was like,
I just want people to know, because Ben and I are planning to do something a little later in the year, and the atmosphere was very much like fun, good vibes party. And I had a ball.
No, I did too. I was fantastic, right? It was pretty much pretty much all the people. I mean, not everybody, it's different people have different things going on in their schedules, their lives, but it was like, 98% of the people that I would want to see at a trip to New York.
Mm-hmm.
But like, so certainly that, and whatever. I mean, I was, I think I was being pretty open about that. I was also like just kind of drinking all day, but like I had a, but it was
New York
also,
Adventures.
what's that?
New York Adventures.
Yeah, yeah.
My voice is literally gone because we were screaming till 2 in the morning.
Yeah, absolutely,
And
right.
Ben, just like typical person that you've been, toking him all night, just got up and didn't even say bye.
Did I not say bye? Okay. I should say, to be fair, right? My Uber was like right there, and also it was like 2 in the morning, and I wasn't, thinking very well at that point. But I thought it said bye. My apologies. But I have a. Yeah, we got like at the end of it was like 2. It was like 1 in the morning. I think we like.
Oh, no, it was like 2.
Yeah, well, by that point it was 2, but like at like 1 in the morning or something, we went to this like random bodega. There was like the one place we could find to like sell us food at that point, and the proprietors were having some issues, and it was a very late night by the time by the time I was done. But it was a lot of fun, and it wasn't just that these are all the people I want to see in New York. It was that it was like all the people I didn't know, right? Like they have all the people who were just like whether it was like the sort of like, oh, I've been watching you since TMBS, all that stuff kind of person, or whether it was just the like, just the like whatever, right? Just the person who was there because they were like they'd been like a huge like fan of the old Zero Books channel, or there was like one Derek Varn super fan that that I talked to while I was there, but I had, but like it was just meeting all these people and hearing what they were into, and getting their perspective and hanging out, and it was just very, very good vibes. And as Jason's getting at, and I think we could say this on the show at this point, details TBA, but we are going to be doing our Give Them a Revolution, GTAA/TIR. And for some of those shows, I hope also /Left Reckoning. So I don't know what the cute phrase is. Give them a
left revolution.
Yeah, there we go. Give them a left revolution. Yeah, there we go. But we are going to be doing some live shows in the fall. Whatever the shape of that is, definitely something in New York, definitely something in LA. Whatever else happens, long term, I would like to even do things like do one in Toronto. Like I think that would actually be awesome.
Atlanta,
yeah. Get the don't actually make me travel. Yeah, no, but yeah, for sure, Atlanta, right? All those places, right? So all that is coming up. I think all that's just good. I think it's just good, and like good for the soul, right? If you do this all the time on YouTube, I mean, like
it's fun to meet people, and I think one thing that, if you know me, I like to do is I like to hear people and what they have to say and what they think about what we're saying, and to get that feedback with the audience, that interaction that we got, to hang out with people to the wee hours of the morning.
Yeah,
I look forward to doing it again.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I see you guys in the chat saying Seattle, but never. No. Well, sure, I don't, sure.
They can take it to LA. It's only like 15 hours. Come on.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. No, we can do Seattle at some point in the future, but New York and LA to start with, I think. So should be very. I mean, but no, it's what I mean. Look, I love getting to see Adnan in person when I was in Toronto for the book event. Like I've. Again, I think there's just something just really just good about that, right? Getting to go on, like 3D, interaction with this stuff, like instead of just doing it on YouTube. And I want to do much, much more of it. Jason, you have anything else you want to say on this?
On this debate?
Oh, well, I mean, I think we kind of did that, but like you and I.
I'm excited. We are actually in the planning stage of this, so please, everybody, stay tuned. You'll be hearing about this sooner than later. Again, I had a ball. Sadly, Pascal couldn't make it out. He felt very ill and couldn't make it. So I think it's going to be even better when we do it again, as we now know what minor hiccups we may have. But I had a blast, even though I came back from New York and my water's off. I was bitching at Ben about that. I'm still a bit on a high of how much fun we had last night, running and jumping from rats all night. And poor Ben was so many. He couldn't. His reflexes were so slow. But yes, I was screaming. A few of us were screaming all night from big.
No, I definitely woke up hoarse. Like when I was checking out of my hotel this morning, I was it's gotta be a checkout. That's like. But yes. Sure. Philly at some point, sure, but also Jack. Philly DSA wants me back. Just ask. You guys have my contact info. I'm happy to do that. But yeah, I mean, I think that
the argument.
Yeah, I think so. So this is all really good. I'm really excited about it. I think the energy was very good yesterday, and I think it was also just proof of concept. This is something people would like doing. So, Jason, I will see you very soon.
Yes, I'm actually excited about that. Yeah.
All right. Beautiful. All right. I'll see you, brother.
Peace.
All right. Adnan, this is kind of your call at this point. How you want to handle this, but one possibility is we could treat tonight, because this is my fault. We had all this other stuff going on, and I thought, the notorious Ben Burgess time management, came into play here. So I'm under no illusions that we're going to have like a full discussion about G.A. Cohen right now, but maybe we could at least tease it for the audience a little bit. You could say a little bit about some of your perspective on this stuff, and we could do like a much fuller follow-up later. Does that sound good?
Why not? Yeah, that sounds good. Although don't be under any illusions that with me you will get a full discussion of G.A. Cohen. I mean, this analytical Marxism is definitely philosophical territory. I'm a humble historian.
Well, it's also about history, so I think a historian's perspective.
That's right.
Is good.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's kind of why I wanted to chat with you about it, because I thought there were, I love the piece that you had in Jacobin about this book, and in fact, actually, the one section that was most valuable to me in my initial reading of it was actually the Schwarz and Weiss. Discussion that you talk about there, which is about understanding for exactly the same way. I thought this really helps explain the sharing economy and the way in which workers are increasingly being required to provide their own means of production, but that doesn't transform their position, structurally speaking, in the capitalist economy. They are not working for themselves. They're just having to have additional requirements even to enter, and have their labor be exploited, So I don't know, maybe you should give a little context for people about the Schwarz and Weiss example that G.A. Cohen provides in trying to clarify an argument of Marx's.
Yeah. So this is and this is actually probably a good showcase for a lot of what I think is best about that book, right? So when we have the floor version of the discussion, I'm sure we can get into like some of the nitty gritty of Cohen's understanding of Marx's theory of how forms of society change, over time, and the sort of interplay between, the forces of production, right? Roughly the capacity of a society to produce stuff, and the relations of a production, right? How the economy, structured. But I think that something that is a little bit sideways to that, but showcases what's good about the book, both in terms of Marxist thought and also in terms of what's good, what can be good about analytic philosophy, right? I mean, this analytic philosophy can be tedious, right? Nobody needs to convince me of that. I've experienced plenty of that. I think the sort of professional vice of analytic philosophers is that in the sort of quest to find like really specific things to say that you could construct the right kind of argument about, that sometimes you end up just spending a lot of time on things that aren't necessarily worth a lot of time, or you do things that are sort of a unhelpful imitation of like the way that the hard sciences are. So like you can have a bunch of little journal articles, the hard sciences, they all kind of add up to something, right? There's really no
Right.
equivalent to the adding up, right? For certain kinds of analytic philosophy. But I think what's really good about analytic philosophy is the conceptual clarity, right? That's yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely the part that I felt was very valuable to me as somebody who, likes to read Marx, think about Marx, even though I'm more on the kind of cultural and
Sure.
intellectual history side of things, that if I want to do social analysis, I engage Marx. In fact, I actually started a reading group that looked at Das Kapital during the pandemic. You could do this
Nice.
online, and I think a lot of people were turning to Marx during this time. But I noticed that some of the debates and discussions we would have in the reading group couldn't
Mhm.
always make sense of, especially when you're reading a lot of Marx. There's so much of it, and he's very precise that you can lose track of some of the elements of the argument. And this is a very helpful book in that he tries to extract key concepts and reorganize the Marxist corpus into clear topical arguments, and to refine and clarify what Marx is saying. And sometimes that means he disagrees with a particular formulation of Marx and thinks that it needs to be somewhat corrected. But by and large, what he's doing is enhancing an understanding of the key logical points in Marx's argument. That's a
Yeah,
very helpful thing.
yeah, exactly, right. I mean, there's a lot of it that's like spent sort of taking like, okay, this is a little ambiguous. Here are a few different ways we could read it. And yeah, sometimes he's absolutely not afraid to like throw out stuff that he doesn't think makes sense under closer investigation, but like he's also tried to, I mean, it's written from the bias of thinking that Marx is basically right about most of the stuff, and we should try to like reconstruct it and understand it. And so the part you're talking about with Schwarz and Weiss is about what it's about is trying to, and it's like a very, very Jacobin thing, right? It's like trying to like figure out like exactly what the sort of necessary and sufficient conditions are for counting as a member of the proletariat, right? The modern working
Right.
class. And so goes through this so he sort of has this tentative definition for a lot of that chapter, which is that and there are formulations of Marx that are like this, right? That it's like that you're a member of the working class if you have if you have you don't own the means of production, right? That you're working but you don't own your own means of production, right? That so like as opposed to like like a slave owns neither themselves nor their means of production, the serf sort of has partial rights over both, whatever. Theoretically, the capitalist, the worker within modern capitalism owns themselves and is free to contract and all that stuff. But the basis of their subordination to the boss is they don't own the means of production, right? You don't, it's your work, but you can't do it on your own, right? You need the tools, the factory, all that stuff, right? So, which is monopolized by the capitalist class. And the subtle distinction he ends up making there, but one that I think is actually useful and politically salient, that I talk about in that article I wrote for Jacobin about Cohen and the Marxist theory of history. I think it's just called "If You Want to Understand Marx, Read Cohen." But is, well, no, it's not necessarily that you don't own any means of production, right? It's that you can't is that you can't support yourself based on that, right? You can't make a living outside of, you know, your employment, you know, by the boss, right? Which is a crucial distinction because he brings up these hypothetical characters, right? So it's like a G.A. Cohen grew up, actually his upbringing is really interesting. If you ever read, like, he's got this book, these like Gifford lectures that he gave that are collected as this book called "If You're an Egalitarian, How Come You're So Rich?" And it's, you know, I was like carrying that around, reading it for a while, and like my joke was always that my goal in life is to be so successful that this question is a good way to own me, you know, that
you can get to Bernie levels of wealth, you know. Why do you have two houses, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Although I always thought that example is kind of funny because, like, growing up in mid-Michigan, where, you know,
where union workers, everybody had something up in Door County, right?
totally right,
Yeah,
exactly right, you know,
Upper Peninsula.
yeah, exactly. It's like that's, you know, that was something that, yeah, like unionized auto workers and school teachers would have that, and it's like, to a certain extent, it's still there. To a certain extent, it's gone away. But it's like, come on, this is what we want back, right? You know, like this is, you know, which is maybe, you know, anyway, a side point. But I should say, right, that so Cohen grew up in this Jewish communist family in Montreal, and like, he actually went to, like, a communist, like, elementary school for a while, I think, before it was, like, raided by the, like, police red squad in the 50s, and, then he went to, I think he said, like, the normal thing that Jewish kids there is they sent their kids to, like, Protestant school because the option was that or Catholic school. The Protestant ones were, like, less anti-Semitic, but anyway, so it's like you know, there's, like, a little Yiddish language joke there, right? You know, because
Black and white. Yes,
yeah,
these two guys, Schwartz and Weiss. Yeah, each working in a dress
garment.
factory,
Yeah,
a
yeah,
garment in the
exactly.
garment
Yeah, yeah,
industry. Right.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And so he says, and so one of them, I don't even remember which one it is, but like one of them uh has to bring his own, like, you know, there's like some of the stuff, you know, that like that um they have supplied for him in the factory, but like he has to like bring his own machine along with it. And the point he makes, which I think is actually incredibly prescient in
Mm.
terms of thinking about, like, I mean, he wrote this in the 70s, right? You know, in terms of thinking about our like neoliberal gig economy hellscape now, right? Is
Yeah.
not only does this not make him freer, right? That he owns this machine, right? That this is like, if indeed the workers have nothing to lose but their chains, this is one of his chains, right? That this
Yes.
is, you
Yes.
know,
It's
that
an additional burden that is in the power of the owner and the employer. I mean, it's just an example of the even greater power in that case. So it doesn't, you know, the real owner of the means of production overall, of course, that controls the industry is the owner and the employer. But they could demand that the worker provide their own equipment. You know, that's really what's happening in that circumstance. And in fact, it actually comes up in the case. I mean, Marx, when he in Capital Volume 1, when he is talking about the textile industry. So this is a very apropos example because he is talking about piecework and the various ways in which, you know, it wasn't just the factory as a space. It was, you know, the way in which this was extended to women working at home and taking on piecework and having to basically use, you know, their own, you know, thread and needles and, you know, and so on to do finishing work at home, and where they had to supply essentially means of production. So Marx is completely aware of that because he describes historically the circumstances of this industrial economy in, you know, the English Midlands. And you know, when reading that, actually, it reminded me of the gig economy, and then to have Cohen really sort of bring out analysis around the point about how that leads us to have to understand the power differential as what's crucial in this class relationship. I think that's important for a historian, from a historian's perspective, because this is one of the issues that I have a little bit with, say, the Althusserian kind of, you know, version of reading Capital, and, you know, the kind of thing that E.P. Thompson wrote a kind of diatribe, a screed, a polemical attack on these Althusserians in his The Poverty of Theory, is really thinking about the power relations as dynamic and changing and having multiplicity. So it's not that just, doing Marxist analysis is not just identifying a structure and then assuming that that abstractly is the truth of all of these particular circumstances. I mean, this is a very idealistic, and this is what E.P. Thompson's criticism of this sort of way of going about things actually is that that's actually a kind of idealist sort of approach by abstracting a structure that is impervious to the particularities that might change. And what Cohen does, I think, in this example, is preserve some of that structural analysis, but put it in historical terms of having to analyze power relations rather than a static structure, which is why I would say in some ways, and this is a kind of question to the philosophers, why one of the questions that I have about it is that he's defending Karl Marx's theory of history. He doesn't seem to like very many Marxist historians in practice, and I just think of this passage that's actually probably not very far away from the Schwarz and Weiss passage, but is in one of
about the making of the English working class. That's what you're
in the section on the structural definition of class, and he takes to task E.P. Thompson in his preface, basically arguing against identifying kind of structure, saying class is not to be understood simply as a structure, but that it's something that's a historical relationship that happens. And he thinks this is perhaps the kind of romantic, poetic language that he himself, as you pointed out in that essay, had to turn away from and actually apply this analytical rigor. But for me as a historian, I rather like those passages from E.P. Thompson that get at this texture and this flavor of class as something that is always developing and changing in a kind of, you might be able to identify it in a synchronic moment as a, structural position where it sits in relation to productive forces and so on. But at the same time, because historical materialism is a dialectical, form of analysis, this is always kind of changing and being reincorporated. And so I feel like something is missing if we're not able to get at the sort of texture of the power dynamics as they play out in actual historical circumstances. And so that's the part that I would pose to the philosophers. I mean, how do you preserve that texture while still being analytically rigorous? Because he wasn't very happy with the Marxist historians' actual work that they did, or perhaps he thought that, which is why Althusser kind of dismisses historical work, is because they can't really contribute it from his perspective to theory. And maybe this is a question. The philosophers think that historians aren't capable. They're good at perhaps studying documents, bringing to light evidence that is empirically necessary and valuable to be analyzed, but that they themselves aren't going to produce theory or theoretical insights. And so that relationship between history and social theory, I think, is what's at stake in trying to parse this discussion in a way, or this criticism by a philosopher of a Marxist philosopher of a Marxist historian.
Yeah, that's interesting. So my memory of what he says about that E.P. Thompson book might be slightly different, and we should take a look at it. We talk again, but my impression of his point, I didn't actually think, and I mean, you mentioned like Althusser, and like that's the sort of person that I think like he'd be like pretty harsh about, right?
I think they both agree that we need to stop these Althusserians from mucking up, Marxism.
Yeah, totally, right. So, and I mean, it's although it's also kind of funny. It's like a little bit like, there's like enough of the mid Michigan boy left in me that like I'll tell James O'Keefe sorry when what I really mean is, fuck off and let me talk. They have that's like G.A. Cohen has this very Oxford Dodd way sometimes of like insulting these people that like he has, like he's got this like paragraph where he's like going after Herbert Marcuse and he's like, well, surely there's some truth in this, but it's like you can tell what he thinks, right? But I think E.P. Thompson, I didn't actually think he disliked that much. I think he disagrees with E.P. Thompson on like a particular analytical point, but I do think that's mingled with appreciation for what he's doing in that book, right? So I think that the making of the English working class, the idea of that book is, and actually it was like when I read that right in Karl Marx's Theory of History, I thought, oh, now I get it, right? Because like I think that back when I was co-hosting the Dead Pundit Society with Adam Proctor, who I love and I've learned a ton from, but like I have like Adam would make these comments sometimes that I didn't totally understand because like I think they sort of reflected an academic background that's like a little bit different from mine, whatever stuff he maybe got from Leo Panich, and like I was like I just I just didn't completely get the point, right? And then like when I was like reading Cohen criticizing E.P. Thompson, I'm like, okay, now I get it, right? What he's criticizing Thompson for is the sort of background of some of the things that Adam would say sometimes, right, about like class formation, right, making a class,
Right.
and I did, and I remember because at one time not totally understanding what Adam meant when he said things like that, and I think that so Thompson, I think, is saying, well, the working class doesn't just sort of exist, like it's not just sort of already there. It's like sort of formed in the course of this historical process, and where what he's really talking about is this sort of political process, that this like the sort of the English working class kind of coming into itself as like a historical subject, and having this kind of collective working class consciousness, with the sort of formation of unions, the rise of the Labor Party, and all this stuff. And what I took, at least from what Cohen was saying, is, look, this is a good book, and he's describing something very real, right? Like he's describing a real process that absolutely happens. But Cohen just thinks it's not like useful or clarifying to call that like the formation of the working class, like it didn't exist. I think he's saying like, no, look, Marx already has this nice distinction that's lying around here that you could use to make your point here, which is that there's a class in itself and there's a class for itself, right? There's so there's like the class in itself is just like there being a bunch of people with this relationship, to the means of production, and class for itself is like, well, they're also like conscious of themselves as a certain sort of historical force. And it's like, look, Thompson is accurately describing the way that the English working class is becoming a class for itself. But like, what is this? If it's not a class, what is this entity that's doing that, right? And what's the and like he even has this nice point, which there's this famous so Marx was in the 1850s. He writes this thing. It's the 18th Brumaire of Louis Napoleon.
Louis, 18th Brumaire of Louis Bonaparte.
Louis Bonaparte. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
And
which has the immortal line of history always repeats itself, the first time as tragedy and the second as farce. I just absolutely love that.
Absolutely.
That phrase. Yeah. But sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
No, but that's a good interruption. I'm glad you did. So I think and in there, right, and so this is like a good text because it's like this is like a classic bit of Marxist historical analysis, right, by Marx, and in that text, he's talking about this like referendum, this like plebiscite that confirmed Louis Bonaparte as like the emperor, I guess, of France. So it's like and then you don't have to have any more elections after that because you've done it, So, and he says, well, it's the French peasantry, right, that like voted to confirm him as the emperor. And why is that? And he has this line about how the French peasantry is like a sack of potatoes, that it doesn't like you sort of put them all together and it doesn't like become this like cumulative thing. It just kind of sits there, right? That it's the sort of potential the working class would have to like remake history. So anybody who's ever heard Matt Crispin talk about this knows that he likes to make this kind of cultural argument that given sort of mass media and like stultification and all this stuff, that he says that like Americans now are like the postmodern version of a sack of potatoes. They're Marx says that the French peasants potato in a sack, so maybe we should say that Americans now are like Pringles in a can, but but in the but he's like, look, so Marx clearly thinks the French peasantry isn't a class for itself, but I mean, like, this is he's doing class analysis, right? He's saying this thing about peasantry as a class, so must be something there that is to be that, right? Before you go through this process of what somebody like E.P. Thompson would call class formation. At least that's what I remember from what I got out of it.
Yeah, no, I think that's right, which makes me think that perhaps Cohen's concern here is that when he's doing his historical description and analysis, Thompson is demonstrating the formation or coming to consciousness, right, of this class, and looking and exploring various elements of what constitutes that consciousness by really thinking through working class culture and wrestling with big problems that maybe we'll have a chance at some point to discuss about the kind of causality in history, base superstructure, metaphor. These are all big topics that Cohen takes on. But that when he's theorizing or making his kind of broader statement in the preface, he's perhaps trespassing beyond, or in theoretical terms, he's not really making an appropriate argument here in his attempt to emphasize the historical unfolding and the historical relationships, that he's going too far by really suggesting that you shouldn't think of class as a structure. He's moderating perhaps Thompson's kind of more theoretical conclusions, although it's in the introduction, it's in the preface, about this. And perhaps what you're having me see and appreciate a little bit more is that Cohen is the kind of balanced, very rigorous thinker who, while he would make common cause with Thompson against Althusser, he thinks maybe he's going a little too far by suppressing the kind of value in explanatory terms of a structural analysis for class. And so he wants to correct that. That makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. It actually occurs to me as you were saying that that when we do part 2 of this discussion, maybe we should see if we could get our friend Harvey J.K. in on this, because he actually wrote.
I was just going to say, I've been thinking and reading about the British Marxist historians, and this context is so interesting to think about, that you have these great, philosophers who are Marxist philosophers pioneering a kind of analytical approach to Marxist philosophy. At the same time, in the same kind of world, these Marxist historians, Eric Hobsbawm, E.P. Thompson, Rodney Hilton, a whole bunch of people. It would be very interesting to talk about this with Harvey, and I'm hoping to chat with him actually for Guerrilla History when his latest edition of British Marxist Historians comes out in the fall. So I think that would be really a great idea. Actually, that could be quite fun.
Yeah, no, I think so. Yeah, I think that right. So that is I've been looking forward to that coming out for a while. I actually I remember when I was at Rutgers getting the this like very like sort of like this copy that was like on the edge of turning into dust of the original edition of the British Marxist Historians by Harvey J.K. out of the library there, and being excited to look at it. But yeah, I'm looking forward to.
So they didn't print it on acid-free paper, I guess. Hopefully they won't make that mistake with this latest edition. It's a good book, Yeah,
exactly. Okay, well, I'm really looking forward to that. Thank you so much, Adnan. Do you want to plug your podcast and all that before you go?
Oh yeah, sure. People who are interested in left history, especially from a global perspective, check out Guerrilla History, GUERR ILLA, and it's on all the platforms. And I do it with a couple of other folks. I'm a co-host on it, and it's been a lot of fun. So check it out.
Very nice. All right. Thank you, Adnan. And now, we are joined by by I know I'm not supposed to say the other Dr. Burgess.
No, just the.
Oh, the Dr. Burgess.
Or just Dr. Burgess.
All right, I'm joined by Dr. Burgess.
Hello, all. Jay Andrew's not here, right?
No, Jay. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
I think Jay Andrew's been in the process of moving to his new home.
For when you watch this later, hi, Jay Andrew.
And so he's not here with us right this minute. I should say that now this Dr. Burgess won't be there, only this one, but in the post game for patrons, which is coming up in just a couple minutes.
No, I'll be watching Better Call Saul.
Yeah. We're going to be joined by Naomi Caravani, so that should be a lot of fun. Wow. For this philosophy, and by the way, if you're not a GTAA patron yet, I was there were a couple times actually at that event yesterday that like people would come up and talk to me, whatever, and I would think, man, just obviously nothing but not to speak ill of the departed, except for with great affection, but I was like, man, at this point in the conversation, Michael would have definitely asked this kid if he was a patron. It's not, but in any case, but if you're not a patron yet, patreon.com/Ben Burgess for $5 a month, you get the post game after every Monday night show. You get the Discord server. You get some extra streams where I'm talking about movies, Jason Miles and Troy Reed. You get all sorts of things, but most importantly, you get our love and gratitude for helping us keep this thing going. So patreon.com/Ben Burgess. If you're already a patron, you should already have that link for the post game, which I think I optimistically said on the email is 10ish, but but we do get to that. But first, I want to do some philosophy. So, which we've been doing this series of Plato dialogues. So, which one are we talking about tonight?
The Meno.
The Meno.
So we're gonna intersperse that with a little Aristotle.
Yeah.
Really take things up a notch.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the Meno is memorable because there's this metaphor about being about like philosophy and having your questions like your assumptions questioned is like being, was it like stung by this kind of fish that it's the torpedo fish? Yes, the torpedo fish that like, so you feel all numbed and paralyzed. So that's I guess the effect. So they're talking about a few different things in this dialogue. There's this there's a lot of interesting stuff going on there about knowledge. There's this famous analogy about geometry. But the part we wanted to get into was about virtue.
The cool Dr. Burgess would never hide her wisdom behind a paywall.
Wow.
Just saying.
Um,
My thoughts are free to all.
There you go. You've been, all weekend I see on Instagram you've been dishing out your wisdom to the Project Veritas fans.
I was actually having a good conversation on a different post of mine about abortion, and a couple of people were like, "Wow, you're really blunt." It's like, well, yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't hold anything back. Not gonna put it behind a paywall.
I mean, I clearly found that charming. So, but
I think it was a compliment.
Yeah. So, all right. I guess one quick thing before we get into the meat of this: when people say hear this term virtue, I think sometimes they get the wrong idea.
My ankles are showing.
Right, that's not what we're talking about.
No.
You know, virtue means like a positive character trait, right? Like,
Yeah.
You know, so I know when we say virtue, like it's like that word has
Sounds very 1800s.
Yeah, it's like we're talking about like
My virginity.
Right.
Let's
right.
just spit it out there.
Right.
Let's just be blunt. My virginity.
Yes, that they it's like, oh, when did she lose her virtue? You know, that's
My
not
virtue.
So yeah, that's the, you know, so but in context, we're just talking about you know, like morally, I mean, you know, not necessarily morally in all but in this context, morally excellent character traits that, you know, your tendency to act in certain ways and not to act in other ways. And there's a lot of this dialogue that's concerned with this like really basic question that keeps circling around, and you know, until they start to feel like they've been stung by the torpedo fish, which is, can virtue be taught? And Socrates has all these arguments that no, it cannot. Because he's like, first of all, how are you going to teach this? You know, nobody can even, like, I keep asking somebody to give me a definition. Nobody can even do that, right? You know, that's, you know, how are you teaching this? What about all the, like, famously virtuous historical figures whose sons were total losers and, you know, and displayed none of their father's virtues, you know, like, so wouldn't they
You have a very good and virtuous father.
I do.
You do.
And so, yeah, shout out to Richard Burgess, but yeah, so this is where the Aristotle comes in, right? So because Plato's student Aristotle, you know, if you remember from The Good Place, there's that little Socrates, Arrow, Plato, Aristotle, you know.
Who died and put Aristotle in charge of ethics?
Plato. So Aristotle actually has something of a solution to this. What does Aristotle say?
About whether virtue can be taught?
Uh-huh.
He says no.
Okay.
Some virtues can be taught. Moral virtues cannot be taught.
Okay. Moral
virtues must be attained through practice. How does one become a painter, Ben?
I don't know.
Is it by reading books about painting and understanding intellectually the fundamentals of whatever qualities there are in paint, brush strokes and perspective?
Yeah.
Reading all of that make you a painter?
No.
What will make you a painter?
Painting. Yeah.
That's what makes you a virtuous person, by being virtuous, by acting virtuously.
Yeah, but how do you know how can you figure out what's a virtuous way to act if, I mean, where are you supposed to start?
Well, my dear fellow, virtue is a mean between two extremes, an excess and a deficiency, such as courage. If you have too little courage, you're a coward, and that is a vice. And by vice, we do not mean someone sitting in a dark, smoky room with a glass of scotch playing poker with a cigar.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, but that's not what we mean. We're not talking about my virginity, and we're not talking about a speakeasy. Right. These are just character traits, good ones and bad ones. So if you have too little courage, you're a coward. If you have too little courage, you're a coward. If you have too much courage, you're rash or foolhardy. But if you hit that mean, then you're virtuous and you have actual courage.
Yeah. And, you know, I mean, that was, you know, I think something else that Aristotle says, I think, you know, you might remember your Aristotle better than I do here, but but certainly an idea that later virtue theorists, you know, have emphasized is that, you know, you can, there is a little bit of a cheat code, you know, to figuring this out, which is that you can do what? I mean, like if you're looking around the world and, you know.
Remember when we had the bracelets, everyone was wearing the WWJD, what would Jesus do?
Vaguely.
How long ago was that? That was a long time ago.
It was a very long time ago.
Yeah. So you got the bracelet and you look at it and you're like, I'm in this moral quandary. What should I do? and you think about whoever you consider to be a good person, whoever you think of as a moral exemplar, as we say, Jesus, your grandfather, some fictitious character, whoever you want it to be. And you think, what would this person do in this situation? But you don't just think it up and then be like, all right, that's what I'm doing. And then, peace, and go do something else. What you do is you think about, how did this person come to this conclusion? What was the thought process that my grandfather would have gone through to get to this end point? And you have to figure out the thought process so that you can adopt it as your thought process. And the more that you do that, the more that you use it as your thought process, then it becomes your thought process, and then you just do the virtuous thing automatically.
Yeah. So,
You feel very underdressed. You just look so handsome in your Led Zeppelin shirt and your nice jacket.
There we go. Yeah, I mean, earlier I was making a fondly jokey reference to Michael's habit of asking people if they're patrons, but I think that
Jesus would be a patron.
Totally. And your grandpa, he would have been. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But it is. I mean, I actually do think trying to sort of navigate this, figure out how to do this kind of media in a way that's useful and thoughtful and all that stuff. I mean, I do think about the guy a lot, and so I think that
Jesus. Oh, Michael.
Yeah.
Sorry,
yeah.
Lost the thread there for a second.
People are always confusing this too. I mean, I think about the guy a lot, and I think there might be something to that Aristotelian insight in there somewhere. But
I think there's definitely something to that.
Yeah. Well, we are going to be back not next week, because next week is the 4th of July, and you should be
Don't shoot fireworks.
Oh, because the animals.
Yeah, animals, war vets.
Yeah.
People blowing their hands off.
Don't
be that person.
All right. Don't want to traumatize the dog or the veteran. So that's.
Or your children that have to see you with your stump after you've blown off your hand.
Well, there's an image.
It's traumatizing. Exactly.
But also don't be a weirdo about it. Don't it's I didn't 4th of July. It's just hang out, go to a cookout or something, be
have a soy dog.
Yep. So whatever kind of dog you do, do that. So I am so we might do some kind of, we're not going to do an episode next week. Look, it's like the Michael Harrington says somewhere that your desire to change a society for the better has to come from an appreciation for that society. I think there's a that you have to see the seed beneath the snow, what it could be, so I think there's something Bhaskar always posts out at the 4th of July.
But there's no snow on the 4th of July.
Yes, but it's a metaphor.
Oh.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So I actually haven't read. I did read a bunch of James Canning years ago. I don't think I read that essay, but in any case, peace and greetings to M. Toussaint, who I actually met over the weekend.
Oh, nice.
So also met Strom.
Oh, nice.
So yes, I did indeed. We did indeed have fries at the end of the night. We shared some fries. I think Jason actually bought the fries, but we both had some. So yes, peace and greetings to M. Toussaint, peace and greetings to the chat, as Pascal Robert would say. We're going to, so we're not going to do a regular episode next Monday. We might do some kind of stream. Ryan and I might do one with the Very Bad Wizards guys sometime next week. I'm not sure exactly.
Am I invited to that?
Sure. Go for it. In any case, we will definitely have a real episode week after next. We'll be doing Thursday night debate breakdowns in the meantime, and I will see see everybody there, except for those few, those extremely virtuous few who are patrons of the show. And those,
that is how you practice virtue.
yes,
You give us money.
yeah, it's part of a community. So we have those virtuous few. I will see in just a minute. You see post game casual Ben. I'll take my jacket off. So I know, right? So
keep your shirt on though, right?
Yeah.
You know, tie your shirt around your head.
Well, you never know what might go on in the post game. So, so I will see people then.
Team Snoopy forever.
Left is best. It's fun.